episode 213 of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. In this episode, we're actually taking a question from one of you. Someone asked us how we profile coffees and taste for espresso and filter roasts. In this episode, we do a deep dive into our entire process, everything from what we do when we get a new coffee in and we're charging it and loading it for the first time, how we approach the middle of the roast, and then how we drop a coffee. What are the key metrics and specs that we're looking for? And then we talk about our cupping process. What are we cupping for? What are we tasting for? What are we looking out for? And also, what are the key pieces of data that we're recording and measuring after the roast that help us dial in a coffee and get it exactly to where we want it to be? Let's get into this. Friends, welcome back to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. This episode, we're diving into, things that are a little more roaster heavy. Thanks to a podcast listener that came in with a question. And I was like, that's not a bad question to ask, and I think it's might be. There's some interesting stuff that we could cover, but before we jump into the episode, let's pour some batchy. I'm actually pretty intrigued by this batch. This will be a wild card. May or may not taste good.
I mean, I sneaked a peek at the beans when you were dropping them in the grinder, and I kind of noticed they were a little darker in color.
No, we'll see.
Am I right? It did not look like beans. Maybe I should stop talking. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to taste this coffee first.
Let the beans speak for themselves, dude.
Yeah, I should stop talking. I had an assumption, just watching you drop a couple of beans in the hopper, that was going to taste different.
Well, friends, first rule, don't judge a book by its cover, or don't judge the beans by their cover. Actually,
or don't judge a podcast by their I don't know. No, I'll stop.
Close. That's actually an episode maybe we have yet to do. It's on my list of episodes that we need to cover. But that sometimes outer color beans can be deceiving. Mm-hmm. And sometimes beans, depending on sometimes their process,
I was gonna say
they appear darker than they do taste, so they can appear like, oh my gosh, this is darker than I like.
Yeah. And
still taste not that bad.
I mean, so decaf is a good example of that.
Yep.
Also, I slurped that the way like I normally sip. James Hoffman on the podcast of the Diary of the CEO, he said he apologized for doing that into the mic. And now I'm self-conscious and thinking, like, are people like grossed out? I feel like
they don't hear it because I turn it off.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So it shows how much Sergi listens to the episode. No, I'm just kidding.
I used to listen to every episode.
He does record them, so fair enough. Fair enough. No need to re-listen to your own episode. So, but what do you think?
I think my assumption was going to be that it was going to be a little jammier, a little punchier, kind of like that cupping we did with the Rojas. Like that's kind of what I thought it was going to be, but it's not that at all.
Do you know what this is?
My 3-pound roast?
No,
I don't know what this is. No clue.
By far.
No clue. I haven't tried my 3-pound roast.
What flavor notes are you getting on it?
Getting a very, very light essence of like tropicalness. I'm not going to say tropical fruit, but this like tropical element, a little bit of like pink lemonade, a little bit of, there's this almost like candied element, not candied, but like simple syrup. That's where I think the pink lemonade, because people underestimate the fact that like lemonade, yes, it's made out of lemons, but it doesn't taste tart. It has nice acidity with a lot of this sugary element to it. That's what I'm tasting. It's got very good texture. It's kind of soft in texture. There is a little bit of a essence of like something's muted about it that I can't guess really. Like, I feel like the way the flavor works, it kind of starts mellow, something's muted, then it goes up and it peaks in the middle, and then the back end kind of drops off in flavor. So it has a very big high in the middle, but the outside is not like that. Like there was another coffee on the previous episode that we were drinking that I thought the flavors just started and peaked and stayed with the aftertaste. This coffee is like the opposite. It's almost like a bell curve, upside down bell curve, you know?
This is the Jorge Mendes from May. So from about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
So, actually, for something that's like 4 or 5 months off roast.
Oh, 4 or 5 months off roast.
Yeah. So it was roasted back in May.
Wow. Where'd you find that?
I just had it in my stash for a long time. I just never drank it. And I was like, this might be, I was going to throw it away. And then I'm like, oh no, wait, maybe I should just keep it on the pod. But, surprisingly, has more flavor than I was expecting for 5 months off of roast.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting. Like, it tastes maybe better than I was expecting on many fronts.
Yeah.
On many fronts. So.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was meaning. I think in the flavor, I can taste that acidity, but there's not much quote unquote clarity. And that might have to do with the roast thing. I'm not going to say it's stale, but I think the volatile stuff is like, because the Jorge Mendes, if it's roasted fairly light, it can be pretty zippy.
Yeah.
With acidity, but when it's a little more developed, it tends to be a little more mellow.
Yeah. What I liked about this is that it had some of that zippiness kind of tamed a little bit, and it had a nice balance of that and sweetness. It was just pleasant, like very, very, very nice. I'm kind of shocked. So, I don't know if you have some old, like 5 months off roast, coffee that's stored decently. Don't rush to throw it away. Just throw it in the batch brewer.
Dude.
Call it good.
I have, I think, over 2 pounds of coffee in my freezer right now.
Nice.
I think the first one the 2K UT, I'm going to break into in February. It's a year off of roast.
Wow.
The other stuff is too fresh. It's sitting in it's like maybe 3-4 months off of roast. Like the Goska brothers, one of the super light roasts that I accidentally did.
That was tasty.
I froze that.
Dang,
freezing that.
That's very nice.
You need to bring the geisha over.
I do need to.
Yeah.
It's at the roastery, but
yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of the Jorge Mendes, before we get into this, it's on a ship somewhere. It's headed our way. So for those of you who are big Jorge Mendes El Panal fans, it's a Guatemalan coffee. But for those of you who are big fans of the Jorge Mendes, it's coming back on the menu. Stay tuned. We're just waiting, trying to be patient, but it's coming back very soon. But yeah, this so we had a guest reach out to us, Dylan Clancy, who was like, hey, how do you approach developing your roast profiles, and how do you approach cupping for espresso versus filter? And so I think the best way maybe to break this down or to walk through kind of our approach is starting from maybe the beginning of the roast till the end, and then maybe some post stuff like our cupping process. So I mean, what do you think is the first thing that you would do when profiling a coffee?
Yeah, I mean, side note, we dropped that one video where we analyze a roast live, right?
Oh yeah.
So that if anyone needs another point of reference, there is that video on our YouTube channel.
Actually, I didn't think about that, but that's a great video to reference if Dylan, if you're listening, or somebody else. It's the Goska brothers roast, and we just literally walk through in real time our curve. And if you guys are interested in something like that, we could do more of those kinds of videos, but that's it for you guys. But anyways.
Yeah. I would say like a lot of our processes, we've kind of dialed in a system, and that was one of in the early times that Scott recommended for us, like, hey, just make sure you have a good system in place. And what we established through that is we established some parameters that we know work best when it comes to cupping it and tasting it on the table. So I think one of those things, like, we don't really fluctuate much in charge temp in the beginning. We don't really fluctuate much in charge, just charge percentage, like heat level. We don't. And then also with that said, like for those folks who are roasting and like keeping track of things like the turnaround, we don't really keep track of it that much. But that temperature in itself, when everything is done, when the warm up is done well, when the between batch protocol is done well, that degree should stay fairly consistent. So
What degree?
The turnaround temp.
Yeah. So we don't obsess over it, but
Yeah.
it is just like a kind of more of a QC metric where we're like, okay, for our reference curve or for our ideal profile, this is kind of where it needs to sit. But yeah, it's not like
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that is also a good marker to know, again, not in an absolute way, not to say like, hey, every single time if your turnaround is at 160, then your in temp is going to be this. That doesn't necessarily mean that. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of time in between turnaround and drop that things can go very well or things can go very, very bad, right? But it is a nice ideal metric to be like, okay, like this is where we should be beginning. If everything was done properly, we're on the right track. I remember even like from back in the day, Ann Cooper was doing the mastermind groups, and one of the things she would recommend is like, hey, this beginning part, it may not mean as much, but it is going to give you a good idea if you're on track and if you're going to hit the right metrics at the end. So I think that's that. The other thing is and again, I'm referring to the first 5 minutes of the roast here. We've also found out, and this we've kind of stuck around almost since day one, is our first initial air change comes within the first 5 minutes usually. So it doesn't always land on the exact time or exact degree, because we also roast. I don't know if this even is important to mention. We don't roast according to time. We don't make gas changes according to time. We make gas changes according to temperature. Even our initial, almost like our charge degree or charge, what would you call it? A gas setting, charge gas setting is still according to like this parameters of temperature. So, and that's a key distinction, because back in the day when I roasted with like when social grounds, like SEA, kind of training, I roasted a lot to either color change or a lot according to time in the roast. So,
Yeah. And, so usually, if we're approaching a new coffee where we're keeping variables like charge, weight the same.
oh yeah.
So, I mean, just to preface it, I think when if you've never roasted a batch and you're starting a coffee roasting company, something I'd recommend is you just have to roast a ton of batches. Like, get used to what your machine does, how it responds to the coffee, kind of where your coffee, how normally where coffee is, hitting peak the
Turnaround ROR.
peak ROR and coming back down, or how's coffee usually reacting to your machine, your temperature, so stuff like that. So just get a few reps in and kind of find a ballpark of like, okay, what happens when I'm turning down these gas settings? Where do I end up at the end of the roast, or where do I end up at crack? But yeah, the once you get through that, I mean, we just try to keep things as simple as possible because roasting is already challenging. So try to change as least amount of things as possible. So like have a set charge weight. So our batches, we have a 6-pound batch recipe, a profile, a 12-pound batch, and then we even have like an 18-pound batch, which is our biggest batch size. Usually like 99% of the time, all of our batches, all of our coffees are either roasted in those increments. So it's going to be a 6-pound batch, a 12-pound batch, and 18. That's mostly due to just volume of how much we need of each coffee. Some coffees get consumed really quickly and are bought out in big quantities, and some coffees are a little less. So that's something to consider. So like we keep charge weight the same, we keep charge temperature the same, give or take like maybe 5 pounds, small adjustments, but even that I don't think is necessarily necessary. And then the other thing is worth considering is we kind of still subscribe to Scott Rayo's declining ROR concept. So If you're unfamiliar, I mean, you can probably read through some of Scott's blog posts or listen to, some of his roasting courses.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, the whole time your ROR should be steadily declining. There shouldn't be any crazy spikes in your roast or declines in your roast. And so, when you think about a steady declining ROR all the way to the end of your roast, there's only so many ways you can get through your roast.
Mm-hmm.
And that already eliminates so many variables.
Yeah.
That alone, that construct, that framework eliminates so many variables and makes things a lot easier, because then it kind of hones in on what you have to do during the roast. You're not thinking, oh man, I have to extend Mallard. So you drop the coffee down, the ROR down, and then you're like, oh, I have to now pick up. You have to zoom by the 7 minute and the 8 minute mark. Like, it's none of that. It's just like, if it's steadily declining and you're progressing through, that's how you're adjusting your gas setting.
Yep.
And then as it's, as you have a declining ROR, at some point, I think that the next really big milestone is really crack.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at, like, where does your ROR peak in the beginning of your roast? You'll see your ROR hit up and then start coming down. Where does that peak? And where does the ROR happen at crack?
Yeah.
And you're essentially just drawing a line between those two things. Yep. And so you can either draw, a really steep line, which might not be the best, but might be the best, or a really long, slow, gradual line. And so what you can, if you're thinking through this, you can start to realize, like, okay, a steeply declining ROR will give a pretty slow roast, and then an elongated, a flatter ROR will give a really fast roast, because your ROR is high, which means the rate of increase of your temperature is ripping through the roof.
Yep. Somewhere
Somewhere in between there is going to be the tasty mark.
Yeah.
And so, ironic, a lot of people are like, oh, how do I roast this Ethiopia, or how do I roast this Guatemala or this Indonesia or whatever, this natural anaerobic, co-ferment, whatever, maceration.
Yeah.
Really, actually, like, we found that all of our coffees are, like, within a very small margin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is probably counter to what maybe a lot of things you'll find on forums.
Yeah.
But a lot of our coffees are just landing within a specific margin where all their profiles look very similar.
Yeah.
Like, once you find the sweet spot, once you know where you need to hit crack in terms of how high your ROR is or how low.
Yeah.
I mean, it's within, I don't know.
Yeah. I also want to add, I like how you explain that, because it sounds very, very logical. And I think when it comes to our approach or Scott's approach of the declining ROR, the reason, in my opinion, that works really, really well is because it kind of demystifies a lot of things and makes it very logical. You don't have to guess, like, is that yellow or is that brown? Like, did the color change? Do I need to switch? It's fairly logical. Like, you have to think about it. Green coffee beans, they're fairly cold in temperature. Like, even if they're stored at room temp, they're 70 degrees. You need to dry those out, and then development stage is the whole roast. And you don't need as much energy and as much power, so you're always declining in temp. And quote unquote, the ROR is actually your miles per hour.
Yeah.
That's it. You know what I mean? So you're not guessing. There's not much room for guessing. There's more or less saying, hey, I'm here, I need to get here, and I want to arrive at a steady stop. I don't want to crash into the wall.
Yep.
So I'm going to have to slow down my pace to get there on time, but not some crazy, I'm going to slow down here, speed up there kind of thing. And that's why we like it. That's why it makes sense to us. And also the part that is, like, shocking, sometimes people overassume and saying, oh, if you have a decline in ROR, your coffee is going to taste excellent 100% of the time. Well, there's a lot of things that happen with the declining ROR. Right. And what we're saying is that, like, the declining ROR helps us eliminate a lot of roast defects. not necessarily bad or good flavors, but roast defects. How we get there, how we decline is going to affect flavor profiling. So there's that distinction is like, hey, the reality is like that shape that you're talking about is going to help us achieve certain things in the cup when we're cupping, and keeping those things consistent in the beginning, and understanding that a lot of our coffees, the color range that we achieve is usually within this parameters. And then on top of that, like weight loss has been a very big marker for us to say we want to consistently land in this area, at least for like a dial-in batch. Okay, well, let's get this coffee to have X amount of weight loss and then go from there, kind of thing. So
yeah, a big metric we've mentioned is like where we hit what our ROR is, rate of rise at crack, is like a pretty big metric that we look for. And then from there, if nothing weird happens in the coffee after crack, so it doesn't plummet down, or it doesn't rip up and then plummet down, if we can manage it to keep it somewhat steady, even if there's a small taper off, that's fine, as long as it's not just a crash or
90-degree
rip. But then we also have like a ballpark, like where all of our coffees sit. So we're just like, okay, we're probably at around, I don't know, 400-ish, 398.
Yeah.
About 10% DTR-ish. Like, don't start roasting and say, I need to hit those numbers.
Yeah, writing
I hate that
down.
I just said those numbers because I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah.
But really, it's like once you find that where your coffee sits nicely, you're pretty much making small adjustments. So we'll hit like a ballpark number spec, and then we'll go cup, and then we'll ask ourselves, man, does this need to go earlier, or do we need to hang out a little later in the roast? And that's already like towards the end. Like we're not making massive changes. We're just like, hey, do we need to just hold on, keep it in there for a little longer, or drop it a little shorter? Usually 80%, 90% of the time, that gets us where we need to be. There's a few coffees that might take like really, we're pushing it, we're moving stuff, but that's a rare case. So talk about because we need to lay in the plane here. Talk about cupping, filter coffee versus espresso coffee.
Yeah. One thing I got to say about cupping, what I love about how we do it, like a lot of the times you're cupping 100% blindly. You don't know the roast curve. You don't know the coffee. You don't have room for assumptions, or you don't allow for room for some kind of bias. And the beauty of that is like you like a lot of the times you cup and I'm roasting, which is even more beautiful. You have no room for, I remember that tweak happened in the roast, therefore I'm going to look for that in the cup. So that in itself is like the eliminating all bias, creating consistency in your cupping protocol, like settling on those things where you can actually focus on your slurp and what's there and going on from there. And I think what I think to add to that, not that system in itself has allowed us to create consistency in the approach, because like you said, what you taste in the cup, you don't really have to tweak much in that roast profile. And what we already like to taste in the cup, we know that these coffees are going to land in this amount of color. So it comes down to like, after we cup, the color reading on the coffee is going to be fairly close. And a lot of the time, fairly, you know what I mean? I'm talking about.
Sorry, repeat that part again for me.
When we have all those systems, and when you have cupped and we have certain preferences that we look for in the cup, they usually land within a tight parameter of numbers.
Yes.
You know, so then again, like it's not like you're measuring color and then cupping according to the measured color. No, you're cupping according to flavor, and then it results in very consistent color. So, and we know those parameters already. I think this system, the way we do it, allows us to create a lot of consistency because there's not much variance there, and we don't have to guess much because we're literally going off of that flavor and then it translates to a data point in color. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's we don't have an espresso roast or a filter roast. We just roast coffee and we release it. However, we do have most of our coffees lean a little lighter, and then there's coffees like the Jorge Mendes or the Aurelio Villatoro, the Guatemala, where those coffees are strategically roasted in a way that is going to be a little bit more comforting, a little bit more. The flavor profile is, I mean, it's going to be a little bit more timeless.
Yeah.
That's good. And it's going to suit a lot of brewing needs.
Yeah.
It'll be great on espresso, on drip, pour over if you want to make a pour over of it. And so those coffees we tend to lean towards maybe a little bit more of a classic profile. It's a little more developed, which some people might say that's like an espresso roast. And all of our other coffees are kind of grouped together, resembling more of a filter roast. But that's not how we don't distinguish, and that's not how we want to talk about our coffees as of right now. But yeah. So, and for that, we're just, the biggest thing is we're cupping, and it's all by flavor, like you said. And I try not to. So we take color readings of all of our roasts, almost all. And then we're also doing weight loss of all of our coffees. And so I know the weight losses are in Cropster. I don't check curves before I cup, and I cup and I don't check color until after I cup, because if I'm cupping, I'll be able to say, oh man, I think this is like a few points darker or a few points lighter. And then the color reader is just either, does the color reader support that or not? 80-90% of the time it does. Sometimes it's like a curveball where I'm like, whoa, I thought that was going to taste dark. That was going to read darker, but actually led lighter. Yeah. Like sometimes that happens, but that's kind of like what we're looking for. A lot of it is taste base. And then when we're talking about like, do we want to lean this for like espresso versus filter? We do. They do fall into different categories of both weight loss, but also color.
Yep.
So I think color is the biggest differentiating factor between those two kind of categories.
Yeah. And I think one thing to add is, for me, when I'm roasting, before the coffee is even the coffee might still be warm in the cooling bin, or technically it's not, because I already measured weight loss. But what I was going to say is, like, what it allows me to do is the weight loss parameter, because it's linked so much to the color reading and the flavor outcome, it gives me a frame of reference to know, like, is this coffee in the ballpark? And I think that's the best part for me, because when it comes to the other things, like, the other things still have to align to our, profile or recipe. But that weight loss is the confirming measure for me as a roaster behind the machine to know, okay, this is probably going to taste in the ballpark of what we're looking for. And the other thing to add is, like, we're also not talking about this major variance in color when it comes to our more developed roast or like our classic light roast. I would, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're still all light roast. Yeah. It's not like the range is like 20 points where you go from, light to medium to dark. We don't have that range. So they're all light roast, but the way we have roasted that coffee, one has a little quote unquote mild acidity, and the other ones are pretty big on acidity, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's a pretty small window. Very.
So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that was insightful. I think this is like an episode that I wish I had like 5 years ago, and we're starting off. That would be a huge game changer and helpful. But hopefully that was helpful. If you guys want to see more roasting content, maybe we'll start sprinkling in a few more roasting stuff here and there, because that's the fun stuff. That's what we do. So, but friends, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. And as we always say, remember, reflect what's good.